谢谢，非常感谢，
没事，
终于见到传说中的老姜了，真的了。
那我们要喝一个。My name's Dominic Johnson-Hill. I came to China in 1993 as a backpacker. I came here for some travel and adventure, and I settled down, found a job, and 20 years later I'm the proud owner of a business. But none of it was planned. It just sort of all happened by mistake in a sort of beautiful, chaotic way. What happened was in 2003, my wife and I moved into a courtyard house right behind this store I'm standing right now, on a very quiet alleyway called Naluguxiang, which is now one of the most famous retail streets in Beijing. Whilst I was living on this alleyway, I one day saw a foreigner wearing a t-shirt that said I climbed the Great Wall, and I realized that I'd bought that t-shirt when I arrived in 1993 and thought it was absolute rubbish. So I thought, again, there's an opportunity to start a business. I didn't really think too hard about it. I just took stuff and plastered them on t-shirts and saw what sold. And the t-shirts sort of quite organically became my look on Beijing. I mean, it was very difficult. Number one, you know, in retail, the 3 rules are location, location, location. You know, I had a terrible location and there was no one on the street. Most of the local people thought it was hilarious. They wouldn't buy my shirts. They just thought it was a silly idea. I didn't have any money and I needed to market the business. So there were plenty of challenges. But it's in those kind of moments that you really stand up, and I enjoy a challenge. I think that's why I enjoy entrepreneurship so much. I like it when I wake up in the morning and I feel scared. I didn't become an entrepreneur because I wanted to be a billionaire. I became an entrepreneur because I wanted to do my own thing. The ideas come from me and Xiaohe, and the designs come from extremely talented graphic artists and illustrators all around China. My dream, you know, sort of 4 years in to make tons of money and open a shop in every city, I realized wasn't my dream, it was someone else's. Even though the stores were making a small profit, I didn't really enjoy the business when it got bigger. So I decided to move everything back to Beijing. That happened about 3 years ago, and since then I think I've probably been the happiest entrepreneur that I've ever been. That's where the business is now. I'm not aiming to be the biggest, I'm aiming to be the best.
This is Shui, which is part of Beijing. About half an hour ride out. Our t-shirts we've been making here for 7 years. This is Zhang Jinli. He's the Laoban, the boss here. He's been a good friend of mine for 7 years. It's actually because of guys like Zhang Jinli that we've managed to keep our quality extremely high. And all the ladies that stitch here are from the village. It just makes it a very honest product. We can sell up to you know, 40,000 to 50,000 shirts a month. So he pretty much makes his whole living off plastered. So the little plastered enterprise holds up the main business in this village, which is nice.
Right, so this is where it all started. In 2003, I moved into this shared courtyard, which I shared with 4 other families. And this is where my girls grew up, and this is started the whole kind of change of this street was because I moved into this beautiful home. This house, this yard changed my life. It was because I moved here that I started the business. And it's a beautiful life. You know, my wife and I always felt that we wanted our children to grow up in the hands of many people and not just our own. So moving into a court like this, which we shared with 4 families, so they're all still here, including Kang Ai, who's the lady working in my shop today. She was my first employee, and the reason I found her is because she was my neighbor. This is tshirts. I don't know how to say it in English. There's a big tree that these grow on. Every year I would climb the tree for Kang Ai and pick them for her, and then we leave them out in the sun to ripen. And then there's a walnut tree here, and there's another walnut tree that grew up through my house. So this time of year, in October, November, we would be eating all the things that come off the trees in the yard. In terms of memories, there couldn't be a more beautiful time in my life than living in number 59, Nanaguxiang.
终于有一天，我的生活改变了。
I ended up on a television show after the brand was about a year old or less than a year old. It was a very big Chinese television show. I got invited on to talk about the brand. And it was a talk show, and I wore a t-shirt on the talk show with my telephone number on it as a bit of a stunt. After millions of people saw this show, because it's China and millions of people watch these popular TV shows, is that the other media that thought I was good and did a good performance called me up and asked me to go on their shows, and one show after another, and then CNN asked me to host a show on Beijing about 3 years back, and after I hosted that, I got sort of spotted by a production company who wanted to do a travel show with a vintage twist called The Vintage Hunter.
I'm Dominic Johnson-Hill, and I'm a self-confessed flea market junkie. Wherever I travel in the world, if there's a flea market, I'll find it, seeking out vintage treasures, the history behind them, and the people who sell them.
It was something that I sort of discovered by mistake, and I guess it's that, you know, the marketeer in me, you know, always looking to grab attention the whole time, an attention seeker. Hey. Hello. This guy is one of my regular stop-offs when I'm feeling needed of inspiration. He's been cutting hair here for years. It's the great thing about living in these hutongs, really. There's kind of inspirational types everywhere where you can just go hang out. Beijing is one of those cities, it's like one of those girlfriends that you meet and you're not quite sure if you're going to fall in love with her. She probably is not as beautiful as you might wish she would be, but then you get to discover her inner beauty and you can't leave her. And Beijing was like that for me. When I discovered Beijing, I didn't really think much of her. But as I got to know the city and the history and the people, I fell in love, and I couldn't leave. But it took a couple of years before I truly fell in love. I can never be perceived as a local. I never will be a local. And if I tell someone I'm a Beijinger from China, they'll laugh. But in my heart, I'm from this city. It's part of my identity. It's been an incredible journey, from opening a t-shirt shop to becoming a TV presenter and having my t-shirts sell around the world. Could never have expected it, but that's one of the beautiful things about life, you know, especially when you're like me and you don't plan things, they just kind of happen.